It's been a busy, busy time, but it looks like we may be more hopeful now than we have been in over a year. I don't know about you guys, but I'm fully vaccinated. I'm Moderna. My wife fully vaccinated with Pfizer. My son is vaccinated with Johnson Johnson. So we're doing our own internal study. We'll see what happens over the next year. We'll let you know. Tom, what's going on with you?
Well, I'm feeling a little nostalgic, Dr. Joe. This is
Why is
around
that?
this is around the same time when we started our nightly Facebook Live events at the outset of the pandemic.
It's really true. It is true. We started doing some extra things. I cannot believe it's been that long. We haven't been actually physically in studio. And Tom, I'm not even sure the last time I actually saw you in person.
November.
Wow.
It's funny you mentioned that, Tom. I'm getting the Facebook memories from last year, and it's almost like a journal, if you will, and
Yeah.
it's fun looking back on those days now, understanding, that it wasn't so new now, but then, and how we were dealing with it and reacting and calling some good shots.
And now
Yeah.
our production value is just through the ceiling.
It's great. It's great. And life is real. Is that your dog, Tom?
That is Izzy.
Me? No, I
Oh.
don't have a dog.
That
That is not
The dog's
my
name is
non-existent
Izzy.
dog.
Oh, your dog's name is Izzy too. Well, speaking of
Yeah.
Izzy, Tom, let's make that a wonderful segue. Could you introduce our guest for tonight's Dr. Joe show?
Well, it's not just the Wumpa Fruit flavored G Fuel that's got me excited. We are welcoming vlogger, YouTuber, handheld console aficionado, and fellow Dick Show alumnus, Izzy Nobre. How you doing, man?
Right on. Thanks for having me, guys. This is exciting.
We're-
You threw me for a loop with the dog. Is your dog's name actually Izzy?
Izzy, Isabel.
What do you know?
Yeah, it threw me for a loop too. So
Yeah, because I wasn't introduced yet. I wasn't ready.
Yeah, that introduction was truly a howl.
Oh boy.
Sorry.
Yeah, he does that.
Sorry. I'm sorry. Barking up the wrong tree. So, Izzy, welcome to the Dr. Joe show. I got a chance to read some of your tweets and look at your YouTube channel. You have an enormous following. It's wonderful. How did that happen?
It's it's very cliche to say this, but I feel really blessed that these people have stuck around for all these years that I've been creating content. Basically, my start with creating content online happened shortly after, like early 2000s. I had finished high school. I lived in Brazil. I'm Brazilian, for those who don't know. And I lived there. I live in Canada now for the last 17, 18 years. And I had finished high school and I was waiting to hear back from the schools that I had applied to. And in that limbo period where I finished school, so I don't have I don't have a daily routine anymore, and I also don't know what I'm going to do with my future because I haven't heard back from the schools. I wanted to just do something to kill time, and blogging was really coming into its own little, form of media around that time, especially in Brazil. Like the people that I follow, the sense of humor, the things that interested me, like these people were coming into the scene. The scene was really being born around that time. And I've always liked writing. I've always been pretty creative when I was a kid. I like to journal and things like that, write stories. So I thought, hey, this is a way to do that on the computer for an audience. So yeah, let's do that. And then it started with just little, in the kind of things that people joke when you're first starting to create content, just experimenting with your sense of humor and things like that. And it started getting picked up by, this other blogger who would recommend me and this other blogger. And then before you know it, I had a pretty decent audience. And then in the mid 2000s, like around 2007, 2008, I started experimenting with vlogging, like basically what I already did, but now in the video format. And that exploded. That became my main source of income for the last few years. And
Wow.
yeah, so that's how that's why Thomas know who I am, because I just like to share the things that I liked, video games, pop culture, sci-fi, that kind of stuff, right? And then yeah.
That's an incredible story. Isn't it wonderful how these small changes. This is one of the things that the I am is all about. Small changes can have big effects. I mean, you start off doing this thing, you're passionate about it, and the next thing you know, other people share your passion. How cool is
Pretty much.
that?
And especially because the things that I like, that's the thing that blows me away. Even though I've had a long career, 10 plus years doing what I do professionally, every time I stop to think that the things that draw people to me today are the things that I didn't like talking about in school because I'd be branded a nerd or a geek, a weird kid. Like, oh, all he wants to talk about is like his Game Boy and video games. Like that kid is weird. I learned that there's only one guy in school that I could talk to about those things, and with everybody else, I had to be more quote unquote normal. And
Yeah.
now that side of my identity that I hid for so many years is why I became known online. And that always, even like again, 10 years after the fact, I still love the irony in that.
It is wonderful. And how, I mean, I'm really so curious. I hope you don't mind if I ask first
Not
question.
at all.
How 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 do you afford to do this? So you have sponsors that pay you, or what's the income
So
stream for this?
at first, when I started creating content, I was just fresh out of high school, so I didn't really have a job. I lived with my parents still. And since migrating to Canada, I worked a bunch of different jobs while I was doing this in the back burner as a hobby until it became profitable, right? So I've worked in fast food, I've worked like washing dishes, shoveling snow, right? Those types of things while I was creating content and just like at night on my computer writing jokes and things like that. Eventually, once you get that critical mass that sponsors and brands start noticing who you are, and they start hitting you up for like, hey, in my case, I talk a lot about technology. So I get hit up by companies like, I'm not sure if I can say the brand, it's brands that
Sure, go ahead.
right? Like
Fine, you go. It's fine.
Samsung, Facebook, Microsoft,
Great.
these kinds of companies, like Warner Brothers, when they were now like, they have some movies that are coming out that they think would resonate with my audience. They reach out, and then we work a deal, and I create sponsored, content for them, and that became my main my main source of income for the last few years. Started all
It
as just a little hobby, but yeah, that's what happened.
it's so terrific. I mean, medical school was my hobby, but it certainly hasn't given me the exposure that you have. There is something absolutely wonderful about it. I was looking at some of the YouTube, and I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of people who are watching this, and that got me wondering, because my kids at the beginning of the pandemic, um, they got into video game
Animal
Animal
Crossing.
Crossing. Animal Crossing.
Oh yeah, that was a big one during the pandemic. That was a big
Right?
one. It
It
was
was
Tiger King and Animal Crossing. Those are the two things that are keep people going.
right. And it was really fascinating because one of my daughters was in New York. My other kid wound up in Los Angeles, another one in Nashville, another one in Massachusetts, and they were still able to stay connected with Animal Crossing. So I'm just wondering, what have you noticed with the pandemic and video gaming? Is is there an explosion of it? Are people more likely to want to do it? I mean, is there any connection?
Absolutely, I find absolutely. Video games have been for a very long time a great form of escapism for people who just for lack of other alternatives. And right now, we all lack alternatives, right?
Yeah.
So it brought a lot of people into playing video games, and some of the habits that people had playing video games changed because of the pandemic, right? In my case, one of the consoles that I play more often, and some of my fan base, that's also what they love, the Nintendo Switch, which is a hybrid system that you can play on your TV at home. But the main draw of the system is the fact that you can untether it from its dock and you can carry it with you if you're going
Mhm.
away on your commute or if you're traveling. Now, obviously, this is a big feature of the system. In fact, its very name, Nintendo Switch, is to evoke the idea that you're switching from the TV to a
Mm,
portable handheld console. Now,
mm,
people are not going out as much as they were, and a lot of people who are interested on a Switch because of this portability aspect, now that's not so relevant for them. And people who already had a Switch, as is my case, I'm not really going out so much, so I play it mostly as a docked TV console, which was not the reason I bought it for originally. So I think it brought a lot of people to this. as people, especially people who aren't into video games, maybe they exhausted their other alternatives for hobbies at home, right? You can only watch so many Netflix shows until you've had enough. And I've noticed in my circle people who are not into gaming or were kind of like closeted gamers, and now they've graduated to that being a bigger part of their identity, because that's filling that gap that they're, outside social life, where that was before, they're gaming.
Fascinating.
Stretch the cat.